Welcome back to Lead Empowered TV. Today's conversation is about resilience, the kind you don't learn in a classroom or a boardroom, but in the middle of collapse. Our guest is a father, a husband, a recovering alcoholic, a former salesman, a cancer survivor, a writer, business consultant, and a ghostwriter. A man whose life has taken some hard turns and meaningful rebuilds. Early on, he thought he would teach and write about history. Instead, he stepped into the wine industry, then whiskey, eventually helping build what became one of the most important craft distilleries in the country, a company that exited for $186 million. On paper, it was an incredible success. Travel, top restaurants, the best bartenders in the country, and of course, plenty of drinking. But success can hide cracks. After his wife asked him to leave because he was too drunk to be present for his own children, he checked himself into rehab. And during his final week of treatment, doctors discovered a rare form of cancer that had nearly destroyed his shoulder blade, leading to major surgeries and a titanium replacement. Today, he shares the stories, science, and systems that helped him stay sane and sober through it all, and that has inspired him to write his book, No Silver Bullets. This is a conversation today about rebuilding, about discipline over drama, and about leading your life when everything feels like it's falling apart. Troy, I'm grateful to have you here. Let's dive into this discussion today. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you, man. Looking forward to just sharing your brilliance and what you have to offer, your story with our audience today. And of course, really want to dive into your book, No Silver Bullets, and just the takeaways that people can take from that and use in their own life to possibly overcome some of the same struggles that you have dealt with it in your own life at the end of the day.
I mean, I hope so. That's what it's about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
that's the goal, right?
I hope what the takeaway will be. Yeah, that's great.
So your book, No Silver Bullets, it challenges the idea of quick fixes. So what made you realize, that the search for a magic solution was actually, hindering your growth, both personally and professionally?
Well, because I tried so long, and I think a lot of business leaders do this too. They see themselves as people who solve problems, right? I mean, for a long time, when people asked me what I did, I would tell them that I just solve problems all day, and it can be, pardon me, it can be fulfilling to do that, right? Like you solve a problem, you're like, oh man, I did that, and there's a sense of accomplishment, but that's for like fixing tires, right? There are things that are so much bigger than a simple fix, and they're the things that tend to hang us up the most, right? And so for me in my life, I mean, I ran into like 3 or 4 of these things in the span of a year or two that just didn't have solution. Like they are ongoing issues that I'd be dealing with forever. And it was I think a good change in perspective, because everything I did was meant to solve problems. That's where I was going. And then when you run into things that are just impossible to solve, not because you're not smart enough, you're not like willing to work hard enough, but just because they will be ongoing forever. That's hard. That was a hard thing for me to grapple with and to accept. But the great part was when I realized that that's okay. It's okay to have like an issue. It's hard to call them problems, but just like an issue that you deal with constantly, and you will always deal with constantly, and it's never going to go away. And accepting that is okay ended up giving me better results and things that kind of are fixable in a really truly ironic twist.
Yeah, and there's some gender dynamics at play there too, right? Because I mean, as men, we like to be the problem solvers. And then I mean, you definitely had some situations that happened in your life where at the end of the day, you couldn't solve them on your own without the help of other people. And maybe the thing that really kind of broke the camel's back, so to speak, was just getting kicked out of the house, by your wife, and recognizing, wow, I mean, this is definitely a challenge I've got to solve, and it's apparent that I can't solve it on my own.
Yeah, so that was, and just I guess to be a little bit more specific for the viewers and listeners out there, like these problems that aren't going to go away, or like, so I had a drinking problem, and that's what you're talking about. Like, my wife kicked me out, and was that a problem that I had to take care of? Yeah, but it's also something that I'm going to deal with and be in active recovery for as long as I live. Like, I don't think it's going away. I don't think that, I've seen too many people think they have it licked and stop paying attention to it. And then that's when it bites them in the butt. And, and I'm just so cognizant of that it just takes, it takes recovery is work every single day, but it's work that allows me to keep the rest of my life on track. So I'm happy to do it, but it's never going to end.
Right.
Similarly, like you alluded to before, right? I got a cancer diagnosis, 100 days into my sobriety, and they ended up having to take away my shoulder blade, right? So I have a fake, a reconstructed shoulder blade and all that. And that is, I mean, that is a thing. Like, I will never lift my hand over my head again, like on my own. Like, one hand can lift the other one, but I can't do it on my own. And that's not going to change.
Right.
And it will be a life of, not intensive physical therapy with a physical therapist, but of, stretches, exercises, and things to make sure that I can maintain it. Right. And thirdly, my son got an autism diagnosis, and that's like, there's no magic pill that's gonna all of a sudden take that away. That is a thing that we will deal with on a continual basis. And so, you kind of run into these things over and over. And it took me, like I said, man, all of these came to me in the span of like a year or a year and a half. So this was a lesson that got just drilled into me. It's like, hey, man, you can't fix them. You have to find ways to manage them and deal with them. So,
Yeah, and I love just how you shared that you have to be cognizant, at all times about your tendency to want to drink, right? Because I mean, we've been on April Wyatt's podcast together, and I talked about stopping at age 35 and literally being, alcohol less, for 7 years,
yeah,
and then getting, in a business environment again where party was the norm at the end of the day, and I was sucked back into that world where, at the end of the day, 7 years in, you would think that I felt like I had my problem licked, when in reality, I did not.
yeah.
So how tempting was it for you, to want to start drinking again? Where here you are, you're making positive, advancements in your life, you're overcoming addictions and those kinds of things, and then you're expecting good things to come from that, and then you're smacked upside the head. Mike Tyson says, everything's good until you get punched in the nose, right? Something to that effect. And
Yeah.
how tempting was it in that moment to want to possibly start drinking again?
Yeah, I I wrote about this a couple weeks ago, and I was incredibly grateful that my diagnosis came. It actually came the week I was supposed to graduate from rehab. And I remember walking into my therapist's office. She goes, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Like, the group has had a tough day, but I'm so happy that you're doing well, and we're going to process your paperwork and get you out of here." And I said, this meeting is not going to be as easy as you think it's going to be. And I told her, I have this tumor. At that point, I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was there. I hadn't had a biopsy yet or anything to confirm it was cancer, but it was in the realm of possibilities. And I just said to her, I said, can I stay? Because I'm going to need help and support through the process of figuring out what this is, and then developing a plan to kind of, take it on. And that was incredibly helpful, because it allowed me to process all of these things out loud in front of other people. But man, I had a list. I said, okay, if this tumor is going to kill me, in 5 months. Like I have a list of cocktails I want to have, or I have a list of drinks I want to have. So I was far from where I am now, where I don't have as many cravings now as I used to. They're kind of few and far between. They're scary when they come, but they don't happen very often. But in that moment, I was happy to be surrounded by the support system that got me to sober 100 days. Like that is a difficult task in and of itself. And then just the systems that I had put into place, then I just trusted them. Just trust the system and keep doing it. And that got me through it. And so I'm just so happy it happened that way. Because if I got this diagnosis before I went to rehab, like who knows? Like off the rails for sure.
Yeah. So in your journey through cancer and recovery, you talk about intentional systems over motivation. Can you share a specific example where a system that you built changed the way that you approached challenges you've experienced, or just how you approach decision making in general?
Yeah, 100%. So there is this is a global truth. Nobody makes good decisions when they are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. This is something that I learned in rehab, because the stats on people who make it a year are awful. It's for if you wrap all addictions together, it's 85% of people don't make it a year without relapsing. That includes things like smoking, behavior issues, things like that. But if it's just drinking, still 2/3 of people don't make it a year. And so when I asked my therapist, I said, hey, how do people mess this up so much? And that's what she said. She said, this is when people make bad decisions. So if you feel one of those feelings, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, then like evaluate and like take care of that issue instead of taking the quick fix of going to get a cocktail. And that is terrifying, because it felt like that would take a lot of willpower. And Nathan, I did not make it to rehab because I had great willpower. So then I thought, well, what if I could get ahead of these things, right? What if I could improve my diet and eat on a schedule so that I'm not making bad decisions because I'm hungry, process my emotions by starting a journal practice, make sure that I'm reaching out to people so I'm not getting lonely, and then, prioritizing sleep and exercise to take care of my energy and get ahead of those things so that I'm not in a state of panic where I'm prone to make a bad decision. And so I developed a plan for that, and I do it every single morning. It's the first thing I do. Basically, I wake up and I eat, and then I have it's right now it's in a Google form, but it's like, how many days sober do you have? How'd you sleep? What did you eat yesterday? How much do you weigh? And then I cycle through kind of 7 topics in my journal. There are different prompts every day, but it's like the 7 pillars of things that are most important in my life. And writing, and then this is kind of what led me into ghostwriting, but writing is incredibly important for processing your thoughts. And Ethan Kross is a psychologist. He wrote a book called Chatter, and he opens the book with an insane stat, which is that we have like 4,000 words a minute running through our brains. And for some context, I imagine if people are watching this or listening to this, they have watched or listened to a podcast before. And I know a lot of people listen to them on like 1.2 speed or 1.3 speed or something. To get to 4,000 words a minute, like are going through your brain, you'd have to get it to like 26x speed. And I guarantee you cannot understand any of that. But when you write, it's much slower. So it's like, if you're writing by hand, it's 13 words a minute. So you're going from 4,000 to 13, and that is a pace that you can actually process what's happening in your mind, and that will improve your decision making. And that's an intentional, you can do that today in 20 minutes.
Yeah, it almost seems like to me, and I've done this at various times in my life. I haven't always been real consistent with it, but just in some of my darkest moments were when I wrote the most. And I definitely found that it was therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
Better to get thoughts out on paper than verbalized, right, to those that we love, because that can be damaging, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on it, when we are addicted to alcohol, whatever the case might be, we obviously are not showing up, as the best version of ourselves. So that's something that's been helpful to me as well. I think at times, it got to a point for me where it became a check the box, mentality, especially like starting off every single day, writing what I'm grateful for. I guess over time, I kind of noticed that I kept being grateful for the same things,
Yeah.
and and I guess that's okay at the end of the day. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, but for me, I just found that I kept writing the same thing over and over again versus really looking at the big picture, because there's so much more to be grateful for than probably I was even noticing in those moments.
This is so normal. This happens to me too. Um, and some days checking the box is okay. Like you do, like there are times when, I have a randomized prompt for my topic of the day, and I just look at it and I go, oh, like I've answered this like 5 times, and so I switch them up once a year or something when I get sick of them. But other days, the same prompt, I will say like, ooh, and I will like dig into it, and then I will look up 40 minutes later and we'll have had a good session. So yeah, it's sometimes checking the box is good because the same question will elicit a different response based on how I'm feeling that day and everything that's happening in my life. Um, but one, I guess the other way that I mix things up a little bit is that I don't write down a gratitude every single day, right? Like I've worked out a schedule so that, there's 7 days in the week. On Mondays, I write about affirmations. I'm gonna like be my own hype man to start the week, get yourself geared up. On Tuesday is kind of the opposite. It's challenging emotions. If you don't face them, they're gonna build up. So you gotta get that stuff out. On Wednesdays, it's about big projects. It's like hump day. You're like, it's a good reminder about why am I building this thing, whatever my big project is. It started as sobriety, and then it was cancer, and then it was my book, and now it's my writing business. On Thursday, it's my wife and our marriage. On Friday, it's the kids. Or sorry, Friday is about gratitude. Friday is about gratitude. Um, I do suggest like I was about work for a little bit, but then work and big project for me kind of combined into the same thing. And so I replaced work with gratitude. And then Saturday is the kids because I want to have like a good weekend with them. I want to clear out all the junk that I might have stored up over the week and just have really good quality time with them. And then Sunday is about aspirations. Sunday's a great day for dreaming. And so when I cycle through them, it helps to keep them fresh. But the other thing it does is if I'm coming back to the same issue, problem, if I'm getting bunched up about the same thing 2 weeks in a row or 3 weeks in a row, that means it's real. And that means that I need to take action to either, like confront it myself, or if it's in one of my relationships, that I have to have an honest conversation about what's happening there. And and for me, and in my drinking, like I was a big, like I would create resentments and I would ruminate about them. And it's like a big section of my book is about how that is such an awful combination of resentment and rumination, and how to get out of ruminating, because it has incredible, it's incredibly powerful, but in a destructive way for not just your emotions, but also like physical health is awful. Like just ruminating is not good for you. And by writing, you get that out. And sometimes like things aren't a big deal. You just need to blow off a little steam. great, blow off a little steam. But like I said, if you come back to the same thing 2 or 3 times, then you know it's actually causing damage in your life and something that you need to go confront right away.
Well, Troy, we've got about 5 minutes left. And one of the
Yeah.
things I want to touch on is this idea of clarity. And I think that clarity is probably comes from the
Yeah.
writing process that you've been describing. But, it's really, as you say, one of the cornerstones of meaningful progress, for someone who is really stuck in ambiguity right now, especially in their career or leadership role, or maybe a negative behavior like alcoholism or smoking or whatever the case might be, what's the first step that they can take to finding clarity so they can move in the right direction?
Yeah, so James Pennebaker is a researcher at the University of Texas, and he wrote, he basically pioneered the research on, he calls it expressive writing, but I would call it writing in a journal. And so here's the protocol. You find a quiet space with no distractions, like turn your phone off, close the door to your office, whatever it is, just no distractions. Give yourself 15 or 20 minutes and you just write. And here's the thing, you can write by hand, you can type, you can speak into a voice note if you want. Like, the modality doesn't really matter. The magic happens when you transform thought to language. And whatever is the most traumatic thing or the biggest thing on your mind, just write as fast as you can. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about grammar. Nobody's grading this. As fast as you can, you'll get into a flow state and the clarity will come. But the other important thing is that it's anonymous. So don't share it with anybody. You can trash it afterwards, burn it, throw it away, delete it, whatever it is. But do that a couple days in a row. And as you explain things to yourself with language, you will get clarity.
All right, Troy, we've got just a few minutes left. I want to give you an opportunity to just share with our audience where they can learn more about you, how they can get into contact with you, whether they're struggling with addiction and want to talk through that with you, or maybe they're interested in your consulting or in your ghostwriting services. Where can we learn about you?
You can go to troykarnes.com. That's Karnes. And there's all kinds of stuff about me there, or send me a message on LinkedIn. That's my most active social media platform. Find me there, hit me up in the DMs, and happy to start a chat there. And I'm happy to be a resource for anybody who's looking for a little more clarity, whether that is like cancer, addiction, whatever it is. I'm just here to help.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And just recently while you were talking, I shared a link to your book on your website. So if you want to get an autographed copy of Troy's book, just scan the QR code that I just recently shared. And also, I love following you, Troy, on LinkedIn. So I'm sharing a QR code right now for anybody that wants to connect with you. I just want to thank you, sir. This has been such a powerful conversation. I appreciate you sharing your heart. And, one of the things that I appreciate most is just the reminder that growth doesn't come from chasing quick fixes. It really comes from intentional commitment, seeking clarity, and just the daily choices that we make when no one is watching. And you and I both have lived that, and we know at times that is easier said than done. So I just appreciate you extending a hand to our followers today, willing to help them and meet them wherever they're at. I appreciate it.
Nathan, thank you for having me. You're awesome. I'm so happy with all your success, man. Keep it up.
No problem, man. Thank you. For everyone watching, if today's conversation challenged you or encouraged you, I'd highly recommend grabbing a copy of Troy's book, No Silver Bullets, and diving into his work. This isn't about adding more noise to your life. It's about building something sustainable. Have a great day.